Hello there, and of course, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, or Happy Kwanzaa, if any of this applies to you. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak agreed on Thursday to work together to find a solution to the dispute over the implementation of the protocol for Northern Ireland, which is part of the Brexit agreements that were agreed and which London has not wanted to implement for a year. In messages released by their teams following a phone conversation between the two, von der Leyen and Sunak both expressed in identical terms that they agree that it is important to work together on solutions, which is what the Brexit provisions for the parts of Ulster are really important to do. The EU and UK government have agreed that in order for the UK part of the Emerald Isle to remain part of the single market after Brexit and thus avoid a return to a guarded border with Ireland, a number of checks and other rules will apply to the movement of goods and if they should be imported from the rest of the UK after the UK has left. With Boris Johnson at the helm of Downing Street, the UK decided unilaterally to apply these rules negotiated and agreed with the EU, and Brussels responded by taking no, they didn't want to apply them, and Brussels responded by taking them to the European Court of Justice, believed that they breached an international treaty. I believe that too. The case is ongoing, and after Sunak took office, London and Brussels have resumed talks to find a negotiated solution that avoids legal recourse. In the call, von der Leyen and Sunak also discussed the situation in Ukraine and the determination of both sides to continue closely coordinating their support for the Russian invaded country and sanctions against the Kremlin. They also agreed to advance ambitious agendas for both the G7 and the G20 in 2023. At a very early stage of the withdrawal agreement negotiations, both the UK and the EU recognized the special circumstances on the island of Ireland. They recognized the need to uphold the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, or Belfast Agreement, to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland and protect North-South cooperation. This solution was found in the form of the Protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, which, for one part, is avoiding a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, enabling smooth economic flows across the island, and upholding the Good Friday Agreement in all its aspects. And it ensures the integrity of the EU internal market for goods and all the guarantees it offers in terms of consumer protection, human and animal health, and the fight against fraud and illegal trade. The Protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland was designed to be a stable and lasting solution and will operate alongside the future or the TCA, the Partnership Agreement. Its substantive legal provisions have been in effect since January 1st, 2021. The essential elements of the protocol are compliance with EU rules, and since the end of the transition period, Northern Ireland has been subject to a limited set of EU rules related to the internal market for goods and the customs union. For example, the Union Customs Code applies to all goods brought into or from Northern Ireland. The necessary checks must take place at points of entry for goods entering Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK or another third country. This also means that when the UK implements the protocol in relation to Northern Ireland, it must ensure, among other things, that the relevant sanitary and phytosanitary checks are carried out. Goods brought into Northern Ireland from another part of the UK or another third country are subject to EU customs duties unless there is no risk of the goods entering the EU. The protocol is based on the assumption that all goods entering Northern Ireland from a third country, that means from another part of the UK or from other third countries, are at risk of entering the Union. Such goods may exceptionally be considered as goods with no risk of entering the Union, where the goods concerned are, for one, not commercially processed in Northern Ireland, and secondly, additional conditions set out in the Joint Committee decision on goods which do not present a risk, meet the criteria set out for their treatment as goods which do not present a risk. Where it is determined on the basis of these criteria that goods from any part of the UK other than Northern Ireland can be considered goods of no risk, no duties will be charged. If it is determined on the basis of these criteria that goods from another third country can be considered as goods of no risk, the UK duty rates will apply. The application and implementation of the protocol is the sole responsibility of the UK authorities in relation to Northern Ireland. In order to discharge their responsibilities under Article 12 of the protocol, the EU institutions and bodies need to be able to monitor the implementation of the protocol by the UK authorities. Article 12 therefore provides for a union presence at all implementing measures taken by the UK authorities. The protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland offers a new consent mechanism giving the Northern Ireland Parliamentary Assembly decisive influence over the long-term application of relevant EU legislation in Northern Ireland. This consent mechanism concerns the application of EU law to goods and customs, the internal electricity market, VAT and state aid, as currently foreseen by the protocol. In concrete terms, this means that 4 years after the protocol began to apply on January 1st, 2021, the Parliamentary Assembly can vote by a simple majority for or against the continued application of relevant EU legislation. In the latter case, the protocol would expire 2 years later. The Assembly can then vote every 4 years on the further application of the relevant EU law. If the Assembly votes across the community to continue applying the relevant EU rules, it can only be voted on again after 8 years. And so there's a lot that the UK was meant to do on the basis of this protocol they didn't do. So they broke this protocol long before bringing in the bill that is unilaterally expiring this protocol, which is another breach of international law. But they never fulfilled their obligations of this protocol in the first place. And when they say, well, that was politics, what von der Leyen and Sunak said. We want to work together on this, but both sides mean something completely different. Von der Leyen means let's find solutions within the protocol. And in the end, the solutions are there. The EU, long time ago, made those suggestions to the British government, but they declined. And what Sunak means is, I want the cake and eat it. He wants to cherry pick whatever he wants, but he wants no obligations to do anything. He wants to scrap the protocol. The protocol Boris sold us as his often ready deal that time, and the best deal in a lifetime or whatever. We know all these exaggerations from that time. And this won't work. I have no clue how both sides want to come together if one is negotiating on a realistic basis and the other one is negotiating on the basis of unicorns again. But we will see how this ends. I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.